Good morning, everybody. Hope that your Wednesday's off to a good start. Mine is too. I'm here in my real office, my indoor office, with a good second cup of coffee and a new mug. It is a beautiful Wednesday outside. It's a beautiful day outside, and you look around outside and can't help but be reminded of the glories of our God. But for today, I went into this a little bit last week. For the next 2, 3, 4 Sundays, or Wednesdays rather, I want to take a few minutes each of these Wednesday mornings with a second cup of coffee to reflect on topics related to the second coming. That's something that believers have been pondering about ever since Jesus ascended back into heaven. When is he coming back? What will it be like? And last week I just introduced the topic a little bit, simply by saying that there are a lot of different views about how this will play out, and that it is definitely something about which we need to show some grace with each other, and made the 2 points that when Christ returns, it will be in glory, and that when he returns, it will be, as he put it, like a thief in the night. Thief in the night, not meaning in secret, but thief in the night meaning that we won't know when. You don't know when somebody's going to try to kick in your front door at 2:30 in the morning. You don't know when that's going to occur. And I also made the point that Jesus made so many years ago, that no one knows. We don't know the day nor the hour, as Jesus said. So, today I want to delve into one of the really, famous, well-known aspects of the second coming, which people talk about an awful lot. And it is the rapture. You may have heard of that term, the rapture. So, what is that? Where do we find that in the Bible? When I'm going to mention this like I mentioned last week, that we need to show some grace with each other. If you disagree with my take on this, that's fine. And that is perfectly fine. I'm just going to give you my take on it and why I believe what I believe. And if you disagree, that is perfectly okay. The second coming is something about which it is very difficult to be dogmatic. So first, the rapture. What is it? Where is it found? The rapture is essentially this. It is the belief that Jesus will return, in essence, secretly, at some point in the future, to snatch up the church. And normally it is held to be that this will take place immediately before a period of 7 years of tribulation. That is normally the way people view the rapture. And this is thought to be, in most reckoning, it is thought to be a distinct event from the second coming. So the most common viewpoint among people who believe in the rapture is that at some point in the future, Christ will come secretly to snatch away the church, to take away the church. And after that, there's 7 years of terrible tribulation. And then after that 7 years, Christ will come again. So there are, in essence, 2 different second comings. One that is secret to take away the church, and another one that is very public and in glory. So the question about where do we find this in the Bible? Actually, the word rapture itself is not found in the Bible. It's not there. But I'll tell you where it comes from, though. If the word isn't found in the Bible, where did it come from? Okay, so the word rapture, though it is not in the Bible itself, it comes into our English usage, I guess, third hand, if you will. It is an English, an anglicized version of the Latin word raptus, which means to carry away. And that Latin word raptus is presumably how Jerome translated the Greek harpazo into Latin when he translated the Bible into Latin back in the 400s. So in 1 Thessalonians 4:17, in 1 Thessalonians 4:17, in fact, I'll just read a couple of verses for you. For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a cry of command, with the voice of an archangel, and with the sound of the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive, who are left, will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so we will always be with the Lord. We're caught up. In Greek, it's harpazo, and apparently that is how Jerome translated. Apparently, raptus is how Jerome translated harpazo, which means caught up. And so this is the common viewpoint among people who believe in a rapture, that Jesus will come secretly. So in essence, there are two different second comings. Or maybe look at a second coming and a third coming. Jesus will come secretly to take away the church, after which there's 7 years of terrible tribulation, and then Jesus will come in glory. And this term rapture comes from a Latinized version of 1 Thessalonians 4:17. So, what do I take on it? What is my take on it? Now, this is a very popular position. The belief in a rapture is very popular in American evangelical Protestantism. And with all due respect to them, I don't see a rapture when I read the New Testament. Just with all due respect, and I mean no ill will to people who strongly believe in a rapture, when I read the Bible, I just don't see it. So, once upon a time I read most of the Left Behind series of books. But to be honest, when I read the Bible myself, when I began reading it myself, I couldn't see it. When I began really reading the Bible for myself and trying to interpret it for myself and not hear what other people put into it, I just didn't see a rapture. And in the broader history of the church, the belief in a rapture as such is very new. This is a doctrine that really only came into being about 200 years ago. And it was the brainchild of a Plymouth Brethren, I think that's who we, Pastor John Nelson Darby. So this is very new. The idea of a rapture as such would have been pretty unknown to Wesley or to Luther or Calvin or Augustine or anyone else prior to the early 1800s. But the fact that a doctrine is pretty new does not mean that it's false. The fact that something is new doesn't mean that it's wrong. So what I want to do is just pick apart the places, go into the places where people say they see a rapture, and dig into that a little bit. We're going to go back to the Bible. So I read from 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. When you read 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, and if you give me a second, I will do that. But we do not want you to be uninformed, brothers, about those who are asleep. And sleep here is it's a euphemism for death. That you may not grieve as others do who have no hope. For since we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so, through Jesus, God will bring with him those who have fallen asleep. For this we declare to you by a word from the Lord, that we who are alive, who are left until the coming of the Lord, will not precede those who have fallen asleep. For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a cry of command, with the voice of an archangel, and with the sound of the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive, who are left, will be caught up together with them in the clouds, to meet the Lord in the air, and so we will always be with the Lord. Therefore encourage one another with these words. That is how 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 reads, verses 13 to 18. When I read that, unless I have somebody telling me, when I read that, to me, that reads just as a straightforward account of the second coming. I read that, and what I see is the dead are raised, the general resurrection. And then those who are alive, we are transformed. And so that is the straightforward reading of it. And the focus in that passage is not on the church. The focus in that passage is not on the church or we who are alive when Christ comes. The focus of the passage is what about our dead saints? What about our dead brothers and sisters? Aunt Susie and Uncle Joe and my grandmother and my grandfather, who have all gone on to glory, who have all died. What about them? Have they lost? Have they missed anything? And Paul's reassurance was that rather than missing anything, they're going to be first to the party. This is a description of the general resurrection. And the point of the passage is hope about those who are dead. As the point of the passage, and what it means for people who are alive is sort of secondary. The point of the passage is general resurrection. That is the focus. The focus is, don't worry about your long dead saints. They have not missed a thing. And they'll be first in line when Christ comes back, and we have the general resurrection, and then after that we are transformed in a moment of the twinkling of an eye, as Paul puts it in 1 Corinthians 15. And the Greek word here that gets harpazo is also normally used to refer to a delegation that meets a returning ruler. So this concept is not one that refers to a group of people being taken away or going to meet the ruler and being gone, but the idea is this. You've got a returning monarch or a king of some sort, and this king or monarch is coming into town, and you go and you run out to meet this king or monarch, in our case the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and come back to earth with him. And when Jesus reigns in glory, at the end, as described at the end of Revelation, where does this take place? It takes place on a renewed earth. Sometimes people also see in Matthew 24, verses 40 and 41, a description of a rapture. Those verses refer to two men working in the field, two women grinding in the mill. One is going to be taken while another is left. And sometimes people point to those verses as evidence for a rapture, but again, we look at context. These are, Jesus says these words in the context of referring to the second coming being like the days of Noah. So the verses immediately prior to this, Jesus is referring to Noah, that in the days of Noah, people are eating and drinking and giving in marriage, and the flood comes. And in the days of Noah, the people who are swept away, who are caught up, are swept away, they're caught up in judgment. Those who are left are the ones who are saved. And so in context, Matthew 24, 40, and 41 means sort of the opposite of what some people might say. For the one that is carried away, the man in the field, the woman in the mill, the one that is carried away to judgment. The one that is left behind is the one who is saved. So, like I've said before, there are a lot of different viewpoints on this topic, and I've tried to explain as best I can what the rapture means and why I believe what I believe. I think I'm right. If I didn't think I was right, I wouldn't believe it. But I will say, like I've said before, that I would like to be wrong. I would like there to be a rapture where believers are, use Star Trek terminology, beamed up. I would like that to be the case, where I could be assured that I would be beamed up. The church would be beamed up before all sorts of terrible tribulation and stuff happened. But when I read the Bible, I don't see it. In fact, when you read Revelation over and over again in the book of Revelation, what do we see? We see instances where the one who conquers is the one who endures. I don't see there any evidence that the church is going to be spared, that somehow believers are going to be beamed up and aren't going to be here. So again, I would like to be wrong, but I don't think I am. And if you have particular questions about this, you can post them in the comments here on Facebook or YouTube when it gets up there in a few minutes. And next week I'll be back to talk about something else related to the second coming. Have a great rest of your Wednesday.